Now, this conversation is for the woman who knows there is more. There is more life ahead, even after everything has changed. You remind me that reinvention isn't about starting over. It's actually about reclaiming the vision that you were never lost. That vision was always there.
And when I looked up, the entire courtyard of the apartment complex was filled with mockingbirds. And I just felt in my heart in that moment that everything was going to be okay. When you are free, you create space for others to be free too. I give myself permission to dream. I give myself permission to pursue a life that is bigger than what I'm living now.
Welcome to Her Own Narrative, the space for women rewriting their story with power and purpose. And today, it's my pleasure to be joined by Donna Woolam, an author and speaker who works with women navigating loss, transition, and reinvention. Now, this conversation is for the woman who knows there is more. There is more life ahead, even after everything has changed, right? Thank you so much, Donna, for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Needy. This is such an incredible honor. Thank you for inviting me to share with your people.
Oh, thank you. Uh, I was reading, as we spoke about it just now, I was reading about you. I was reading the questions and answers we've just exchanged a few times. How would you describe your story in one line?
In one line, I think that my story is this exploration of the strength and the wisdom that we carry within us, and that when we're going through circumstances, we don't know the end, but we can be fully present and receive great strength, wisdom, and grace in that there is so much more inside of us than we know. And I believe that no matter what you've been through, you can start and have a brand new beginning.
And that is exactly what you said. You said you believe that impossible is possible. So, what is that lived experience that gave you permission to build that?
Mm. Well, there are, I think, probably two major life shift moments for me that have happened within the last 20 years or less, probably less than that, the last decade. The first of those, now I have a wealth of life experience that I've lived before then, but in 2012, my husband was diagnosed with cancer. And I was in the midst of building business. I was teaching, I was coaching, I was speaking, I was writing, all of these things that I do now. But in the middle of that, my husband came home from work one day, asked to go to the doctor, which he never did. We took him, walked into an emergency room. He had a broken right arm, and they walked in and said, "Mr. Woolam, you have a tumor, you have cancer." And those words, I don't care who you are or what kind of cancer there may be, those are life shifting, life altering words. We didn't know how bad it really was, but that he had multiple myeloma, which is a blood cancer. People are familiar with leukemia, lymphoma, those kind of things, but myeloma is not one. I think more people know about it now, but at that time, there wasn't a lot of information, and it was almost certainly a death sentence within 10 years. He had incredible doctors, Needy, and he had this incredible strength within him. He just was kind and good, and I'm over here in the corner thinking, "What are we going to do? What now?" I mean, I was strong within myself, but I'm a thinker and a planner, and let's create a process forward for the unknown. And being a visionary woman who had big dreams for the future, big plans for what was ahead of us, it felt like the entire future went completely black. And for any woman who is a big dreamer, a visionary, a doer, when it feels like that there's nothing out there for you, it can be really terrorizing. And it took me a long time to find my way back to that. In the process, Richard, it was discovered, had another kind of cancer, which was renal cell carcinoma. So he's battling two cancers. He has all of this treatment. We have to leave our home from over 20 years and move from Midland, Texas. I know there's a Midlands in the UK, but Midland, Texas to Dallas, Fort Worth area. We left our home, we left our friends, we left our family. We lived in and out of hospital rooms, literally packed my suitcases, shoved them into drawers in the hospital rooms. And we lived that way for over a year and then moved and made that switch. Richard had ups and downs, really good times and really awful times. I told him that if there was any weird thing that he could have, he would have it. He ended up with some strange mycobacterium that's from Africa. He had never been to Africa. Where did that come from? He had a stroke in his eye. He had more physical problems, but he maintained this beautiful strength. One of the stories I love to talk about in that is that I just didn't know how I was going to have the strength. It was Richard and myself. And we had to move back and forth. Midland to Dallas is about a 500-mile trip. We were making that all the time. The back of our car was loaded. I would move him into this temporary housing situation. I would load up the car and move him back. Just me, by myself, in my 50s. And I just didn't know what I was going to do. I felt so alone and isolated. And one of the stories I love to tell is a story about mockingbirds. And they happen to be the state bird of Texas, but they were just a bird that always in my life had meant the nearness and closeness of God to me from the time I was a child. And as I was pushing this load of suitcases and making my way from the car to the apartment, talking to the Lord, I said, I don't know how I'm going to do this. What am I going to do? And I heard this sound. And when I looked up, the entire courtyard of the apartment complex was filled with mockingbirds. And I just felt in my heart in that moment that everything was going to be okay. I was going to be able to make my way through. There's a lot of this story and not a not a plug really, but I wrote a memoir and released that this past year about so much of that journey. There's so much more in there. But Richard passed away in July of 2020, and it was almost 8 days, 8 years to the day when he died. And so now I'm living this life. I'd always been married from the time I was 17 to Richard over 42 years, super independent, highly capable, but all of a sudden I'm in this life, trying to figure out how I'm going to live. And I was able to move forward in that. And then a couple of years ago, this is part number 2 of these life-changing things. I've managed to move forward. I've got family, I've got friends, I've got a nice little home where I live. It's not fancy, it's not what we had, but it's good, it's mine. I'm thankful and grateful. And I went to work for a religious institution. I was actually going to church there, loved working there, loved being with the people and serving. And there was a situation there that caused me to have to leave that church, to leave that church family, leave all of that. And in that, I felt a lot of betrayal. And so within myself, I had to walk through that and come back to this woman where I'm sitting here with you today, knowing that there is so much out there for me, that I am living a life now to bless and honor the future Donna who's calling out to me saying, you can do this. Just keep going. It's going to be great. And life is beautiful. Just don't give up. So I know that through death and betrayal and loss and all of those things, my source of strength is God Himself. And He is the source, but He makes me the resource for my life and gives me what I need to move forward.
Wow. Wow. So I hear loss, I hear grief, I hear betrayal. But at the same time, I hear faith, right?
Right.
Also, at the same time, thinking and reading in between the lines is age
Hmm.
and this the identity. I'm hearing the words pain and I'm hearing the words moving forward, right? So you say, how does faith, like you said, mockingbirds, yeah, flock? Do you think faith in itself was enough for you to move forward?
Wow. That is a beautiful, insightful question. In the moment, I don't think that I knew that it was. In the moment, it was, how do I do the next XYZ? How do I get to the doctor's office? How do I get to the hospital? Those were moments where it felt like that I was just taking one step in front of the other. But here's a beautiful thing about faith. And for me as a Christian woman, faith isn't what we can see. Faith is what's inside, it's who God is in us and to us. And He was giving me strength that I did not know was inside of me and helping me.
So good.
And so, and this is a thing that when I think back on what I had to do in those moments, and I think about trying to do all of this now, I think there's just no way. There's no way. And before then, I would have said, there's no way. But this is what I believe that the Holy Spirit said to me after that as I was meditating on it. He said, Donna, you didn't need that strength. You didn't need that power. You didn't need that grace until that moment. You don't need it now. So it's not living there necessarily now. You need grace for other things, but what you needed, I gave you. And so for me, that is faith. It's not some kind of checking off boxes. It's living day to day, believing that God is for you and wants to help you and wants to deliver you in your deepest, darkest places.
So this is that's so beautiful. And I love the way you put it together as well. Like God gave you what you needed at that point, and God's giving you what you need now at this point. And so that itself is faith and it's with wow, gorgeous. I want to go back to the age because we mentioned that a few times. And why I say that is I think there is a generational shift. There's a shift in our generation, which I'm clearly seeing. And when I say our generation, I'm talking about the into 40s to 65, 70 even. Yeah. This generation of women are shifting. Yeah, we are not ready to say accept and compromise, right? Like what our mothers did, we are challenging it. Because I remember the words our mother generation used to say, oh, we've turned 40 or we've turned 50, we've lived our life. We're saying we are starting our life. And that is a massive shift, right? So, so many women like yourself, like me, we're like, no. This is not, I'm not going to actually start now. So when you say age is just a number, not a destination, what did you have to let go internally to stop shrinking to match your future to that age? Oh gosh. I know it's a lot of words, a lot of words, right? Let me put this again. Right. Okay.
You're a master of the question. That is a powerful question. Thank you for that. I started my first entrepreneurial journey. I'd always been an employee. I'd been a stay-at-home mom with lots of ideas. I did a lot of things as a stay-at-home mom, and I worked for other people. But my first entrepreneurial journey began when I was in my 40s. And I was blessed to be around a group of people. First, I had a husband who believed that if Donna wants to do it, she'll figure it out. And that's who I am. I know that's not all women have that. And I
All
sure
women have that
oh,
support, that
yeah,
encouragement. No.
no, no. But I was with a group of people who put no limits. Some of the most successful women in that business were older than I was. So I didn't see that you had to hurry up and be successful with before you were 50, for one thing. And so that began to create a foundation for me. And then honestly, in my mind, there have been times when I thought, oh, I'm just getting too old. And so what I do for myself is I get out there and I look for women older than I who are killing it, crushing it in the world. I think of women like Martha Stewart, who said she didn't start her business till she was in her 50s. There's men out there too who didn't have great success until they were in their 40s or 50s, but it's a little bit of a different dynamic for men than it is for women. And I think that what I want so much is to leave this legacy that life isn't linear. It isn't you are born here and you die here, but life is what you do in the middle of it. And I challenge myself weekly, not always daily, but weekly to say, how are you living life? And I remember maybe 6 months, 8 months after Richard died, I was shuffling along in my kitchen, just existing. And I stood in the middle of my kitchen needy and I said, Donna, live. Donna, live. And it was almost like that Lazarus moment when Jesus calls Lazarus out of the tomb to come alive. There had to be that call in myself to say, you must live. And it doesn't mean I've done that perfectly, but I just don't see an end out there. I think that for in myself, I know that there is great potential until the day I die.
Oh my God, Donna, I wanted you to be in my studio. I want to give you a hug right this very second.
Yes, I think that the challenge, I think the challenge for us is reminding others that we still have value, we have wisdom, we have insight, we have capabilities and abilities within the realms where we're working because there is, unfortunately, still a lot of ageism in the world.
Of sexism, everyism is
Everything, everything. And so to just stand firm and say, I am not leaving. You're going to have to deal with me and the things that I bring to you. You can't shuffle me to the side and to stand firmly in that knowledge of who you are.
Donna. I absolutely love what you just said because it's like you said, you just have to realize this and make others realize, but also it is actually telling yourself that, hang on, I it's drinking. I'm not gonna do it. Like you said, that shake up, Donna. You're not living like this. Niji, you're gonna go for it, right? It's like, nope, I will not settle. I will not compromise. So there are two things here: mindset
Mhm.
and the tribe. You got inspired by your tribe. You saw women who were crushing it, like in your words. Then you read up upon the women who are killing it as well. Doesn't matter which ism is that, right?
Right.
So that was the tribe you were associating yourself with. And the mindset was shifting. And you said, no, the belief has to come from these two things. If they can, I can, right? And I will do it. What an inspiration. And today, you are one of those women who I would want to read up and say, she can. As isn't that a legacy you want to actually leave behind?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Incredible. Right. So let me just go back to my notes here. This is so great. So there was a point where you said you were strong for everybody. Like if you look at Donna, there's nothing wrong, right? She's absolutely fine, put together, getting inspired every day, started an entrepreneurial journey. She's killing it, crushing it, right? But there's something inside that's still broken. Do you think you were misunderstood there?
Mm, I think I misunderstood myself because we can, and not everyone battles with, I would not say that I'm a people pleaser, but in the realm where I'm working and serving, my heart bent is to support the people I'm working with. So if I go back a couple of years to this place of betrayal, I don't think they meant to betray me, but I had given so much of my heart and my life to them and to supporting someone else's mission. Now, listen, that is a beautiful thing to do. That is beautiful and powerful to be a support for someone else's mission. But you cannot lose who God created you to be in the middle of that and what He's called you to do in the breadth of that. And I did that. I laid all of that down and I left, honestly, for in that particular season. So I had 8 years of working behind the scenes to develop my coaching program and my speaking abilities and doing some writing while Richard, he was not well on the couch and I was sitting in the big chair in the corner writing and learning. So, even when things are really, really hard, you can still pursue who you've been made to be. But in that season where I was working somewhere else, I let all of that go. I didn't write, I didn't do social media for anything but where I was working. I didn't do any training or coaching or any of that for myself. So when I came out on the other side of that, this identity shift of who am I now? And having to remind myself, you are still the same woman that you were created to be and that God has shown you. You are still an author. You are still a speaker. You are still a coach. You just now have more to bring that. So it was a huge identity shift, but it was also believing in myself. And I believe that when we go through, I call them life altering circumstances, it can be anything. It doesn't have to be death of a spouse or of a parent. It doesn't have to be any of that, but we can have death of identity in any place in any season. And we need to remind ourselves who we are and come back to life again in those moments.
So clearly, and this is again because I've read up on you. So for all viewers who are listening to this, for the listeners, so this was at a church, right, where you
Mhm,
poured your heart in, and for some reason you were told some unkind
mhm.
words,
Right,
became your identity at that point.
right.
So it's like you lost yourself and
Mhm.
you lost role,
Yeah.
where you had invested everything you poured your heart in. And which one hurt more?
My identity, because I sat in those moments in prayer and journal page after page after page of journal. I'm a huge believer in journaling and had cognitive dissonance, this complete cognitive dissonance, because this is what I knew myself to have always been. I knew that this is what I believed myself still to be, that over here was someone that I honored and respected saying something entirely different. And so this dissonance and the poison power of those words wrecked me. And I had to pray and cry and talk and pray and cry and talk. The unfortunate thing is that and I say unfortunate, I had a really good friend that I had worked for before in an virtual admin capacity with her nonprofit business. And she scooped me up and said, "Here, I want you to work for me." But there was so much brokenness in me, needy, needy, that I could not do the best job for her. And I look at that with such deep regret that the pain of my own brokenness affected what I was able to do. So I want to tell people, women, that when you are broken and you're hiding that inside of you, that's not helping. It's not helping. It is crippling what you're going through right now. Now, I was fortunate to have some other people in ministry positions and my sister, my dear sister, and different people in my life that I could go and be vulnerable with, but there was still so much of that I didn't. And I'm working on some things for a program that I'm working on right now. So I'm looking back at some things in my journals, and the words that I spoke to myself is really about, have I failed myself? Have I disappointed myself? Am I really this kind of person? Have I been lying to myself all this time? And the huge resounding answer is no. You did not betray yourself. You are not a failure, and you are still valuable and worthy and still have something to share with other people. So, for high performing women, which is who I love to work with, visionary, high performing women who find themselves in that spot, having someone safe to say, things didn't work out just the right way, but you're going to be okay. And let's get back to the promise and the vision that you started with.
That's so important. But you so like, what you just said, this was for you, it was your organization at church, you were working with those unkind words, that where all the affirmation starts to come as well, the chaotic stuff. We can say all these things, but also people around you. When they saw all those things, that becomes your true identity. If someone just has to you that if you are not capable, you will eventually, I think, unconsciously, subconsciously start thinking you're not capable, right? And that's the words of affirmation when people say the kind thing. But what if somebody else is saying those things to you? You have an identity crash, like you said there. I would be you. And you said, it wasn't the place you were hurting. You were so hurting. So how do you recover from there where somebody else's words have hijacked your identity? How, what? How does it? It's a and look, we all have lived experiences here. Somewhere or the other, I can sit here and vouch. Most women have had identity crash because of someone else making them believe us less.
Yeah.
So how do you recover from that?
Well, for me, and um, what I love is that what was happening within me and how I was moving through it has become something that I help other people with. And I just want to encourage you and all the people listening to that is whatever you're going through isn't wasted. There is gold and treasure and wisdom and life in there if you're willing to just like peel it back a little bit. So, what I was going through and what I was learning was this big piece right here is that we all have a place within us that we look at the world through filters. We are things that have been said, things that we've done, things we've said to ourselves, or people have said to us, we begin to use them as a filter. And the very first place that you have to start is to ask yourself, is this true? Is this something that is borne out in history? Is it borne out in what's going on? And if it's not true, what are you doing continuing to believe it? Because what happens is that we have these thoughts. It's the neuroscience thing. I'm not a neuroscientist, but I love this. That we have these thoughts these that trigger emotions that trigger the actions that we take. And so we have to disrupt that there. So the Bible says that we take every thought captive and bring it into obedience to the word of God. And so I just began to be ruthlessly honest with myself, even if it felt a particular way, to be able to say, no, this is not truth. And so then for me, it's about taking all of that kind of stuff, and it's not about digging into the past so much about why or where. It's helpful just but to just be able to take that thought and say, "You are not serving me. You are not building my life. You are not helping me. I'm going to do something about you, and I'm going to."
Really sorry, but I want to interrupt you because I know you've said you don't mind going a little bit personal. So if you don't mind actually telling us what was said to you that brought you identity crisis here, and then how did you? Because you know, I know it, but I want to ask you because there are lots of women who've been told something like that. Yeah, and you start believing that this is who I am. What do you do? So I would actually, if you don't mind, share that with us, please.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was serving as an executive pastor, which was the support for the senior pastor in our church. And my role and responsibility, I was hired because I was an excellent coach and I had worked with a person on staff and really helped them shift some things so that they were more productive in the work that they had been doing. And because of that, there were some things that they wanted, and they hired me to come in as overseeing the staff and ministry leaders and to help them to just really become what they needed to be in all of those different realms and to help in some marketing and things. I'm just one of those women. I've learned lots of things, but my primary role and responsibility was to support the mission and vision of the senior pastor and to mentor, coach, and oversee, not just but manage the paid staff and the ministry volunteers. And I was told by the senior pastor that I really needed to be trying to think how I want to say this. He said he needed me to just be really a hard ass is his were his words. I need you to get this done. I need you to make these people do what they need to do. So that really set the tone for what I was supposed to do. And so I just went in and used my skills, used my talent and permission to really begin to move that. Well, there were some situations there where a person was not fulfilling what the senior pastor wanted them to do. And so I was tasked with bringing that person into alignment or into order, or he was going to have to be replaced. It's just, you know, it was awful, but it was what had to happen. Eventually, that person left. Well, it was right after that person left that all of a sudden, my senior pastor, my employer, started saying, "Well, Donna, you're not very kind. You're a little harsh. You're not kind." I'm like, okay, well, I think that I really try to be honoring and loving and kind in the things that I say. But if I'm not, then I will be more gentle. So I endeavored to do that. But over this point of time, it seemed like every time he gave me a directive and wanted me to then to go and tell someone something that he wanted change, that what appeared to happen, Needy, was that when they would come to him to say, what's happening, what's going on, he did not back me up in the things that I was saying. And so I worked there. Yeah. Yeah. And so I had come in as a teacher, a preacher, a speaker, and he had never allowed me to be on the platform. And these things where I would try to help people, he wouldn't let me do part of what my job was. And it came to a point I said, I just really need to know if I've done something. Is there something I need to work on, something to fix or whatever? And he came back, he said, Donna, there's a group of people who think that you're unkind. And so you are disqualified from speaking and ministering to the congregation as a whole. And just to be blunt, I thought I would pass out and throw up in that office when he told me that. It was awful. It was an out of body experience. He would not tell me who they were. I couldn't go to them and talk to them. And
So you believe so.
I believe the words. I believe the word. There were also some there were some other things going on with my extended family who were in the church, and there was some conflict there. And I have all kinds of suppositions about why that was. But what I know is after I turned in my resignation, because this was my belief, if you can't trust me to serve the people, I have no business being on your staff. I have no business serving in your ministry if you can't trust me to love and serve the people to the highest level. And so I resigned and left. I had some really good, I mean, I just left. There was no big pronouncement of Donna's leaving or anything. I turned in my resignation and packed my things and I walked out the door because there was this self survival in me. There were people who were part of the elder staff that were my really good friends, and one in particular who's still a friend and confidant. And part of this, what I want to say is in this mix of all of this stuff going on, there was no one in conversation except he and I. The elder staff who worked over that didn't know anything about what was going on. And when I turned in my resignation letter, I gave it to him by hand, but I also sent a letter to the elder staff with that exact information. And the feedback to me was, I can't believe that this has happened. So that helped me then know I wasn't a crazy person. And me thinking that this is all out of proportion and wrong and all kinds of things was not just me. It was other people. And I don't talk much about the church or the name of the pastor or any of that kind of stuff because I don't believe that's honoring. I don't believe it's the body of Christ. I don't believe that it's what God wants us to do. It was a situation that I was experiencing. But I found out later there's lots and lots and lots of people who go through that kind of thing and keep it very quiet. And so I do talk about it some in the general terms. But sitting on my couch and crying and thinking, who am I now? Took me a long time, months, before I could remember who I am.
So something like that jolts you literally, and where it's an identity crisis, you are left with no choice but to find yourself. How to let go of the bitterness, and how do you, are they forgiven?
Yes. And I remember hearing something. So it's like, it's this story in the Bible about how often do I forgive them? And Jesus says 7 times 7. But I think the practical terms of that for us today is every time I think about it, I forgive. So for the woman who is thinking that right now, that if people really knew who you were on the inside, that they wouldn't like you, wouldn't love you, wouldn't value, wouldn't think that you had anything to bring to the table, which is kind of what we think as women. I don't, that there's, if I'm not this thing to everyone, then are weird. Yeah, exactly. That you, as that woman, to understand that you are beautiful here in this moment in your brokenness. You are beautiful here in this moment of struggle. That part of what is being built in you right now for the strength that you're going to need tomorrow is being built right here in this moment when you feel like you don't have everything together. And that there is wisdom in the struggle, there is healing in the struggle, and to allow yourself the opportunity to at least tell one person, I'm not doing well here. I'm struggling here. I don't have all the answers here. I don't know what I'm going to do going forward from here. But to understand that just because it's a hard place and maybe the future and the vision doesn't seem clear to you like it used to, it doesn't mean that there's not a vision and a future for you. I had built a different kind of business entirely in the years before Richard was sick. I was involved in sales, I was involved in marketing, I was involved in training women in business. And those ensuing years when I was studying and learning about coaching, I thought, oh, that's what I will do. I will teach women about that. And so for this small span of time, that's what I did. But on the other side of what I was going through with Richard and with his death, I understood that all of that pain and loss and struggle was beautiful treasure because I wasn't the only one. Like you said, Needy, you weren't the only one. And someone out there needs your voice, your experience. So be strong for yourself in this moment and understand that the struggle isn't all the loss that it feels like. It is actually ground for beautiful growth for your future. Yeah. Right. 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 I think that part of that discovery for me, and it goes back to my faith and my relationship with God, part of that is that there are depths of God and places of God that you will never experience until you need Him in a different kind of way. As a mother, as an entrepreneur, as all of these different things. So I say that in this moment, and it's funny because I'll say I'm a widow because that is technically what I am. And I had read always in the Bible that God wanted us to be kind to widows and orphans. And my parents are gone, so I guess I'm a widow and an orphan. But you have this idea of what that looks like. But for me, in those moments when I didn't know what was going to happen for me, God revealed this deeper place in Him that was made for me as a widow and promises for me and a relationship with Him that I would never, ever have known if I hadn't gone through that. There are places in my faith walk, in my faith journey, in my discovery who God is that I would never have known if I hadn't spent 8 years as a caregiver 24/7 after I'd been a strong, independent, entrepreneurial woman. Richard and I loved each other, but he did his thing and I did my thing, and we just lived life kind of in a satellite around each other, and that disappeared 24/7, 365 for 8 years. And there were things in that that I would never have known if I hadn't walked through that, like, I didn't know how much strength was in me and how much strength was available for me until I needed to walk through that. So, in this moment, there are still pieces being unveiled of who Donna is and who God is in that moment and how I'm living in that, that are preparing me for what's ahead. It's a beautiful, glorious adventure if we will look at it as a beautiful, glorious adventure. Mm, yeah, yeah. I listen his I had always written a bit. I told you I'm an avid journaler, great believer in the power of that. Even as a young girl, it's just so much drama. I think about my 12 and 13-year-old self. 7. Right, 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 right. Yeah. Mm. Right, right. So Jeff Wines As I was learning to be officially an author, Jeff Goins, who is a wonderful author and a teacher of authors, said, "You become an author when you say, 'I am an author.'" And when people say, "What do you do?" and you say, "I am an author," it creates a shift in your identity. Now, it may not mean that you've written a New York Times bestseller, but that identity shift was important for me. And so I wrote my first few books with that. I am an author. I am an author. And then as a speaker, I know when I'm on a stage somewhere, that is the place that I am meant to be. And I love it. I love preparing for it. I love being able to do that. And so that was not a hard fit for me to say I'm a speaker. It was just, I'm seeing myself on the porch as a little girl talking to the street about things that were going on, even though. I would really encourage that woman first to begin to talk to herself and speak to herself that life isn't over for her, that there is more for her ahead, that she has days and days and days of life ahead of her, and to begin to really sit and dream and think about how she sees herself in the future, and to give herself permission to play around looking at the future version of herself. And if she is not content with taking who she is today and putting that out 10 or 15 years from now, if she's not content with what that picture looks like, then it is an opportunity for her to begin to dream about what she might want.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. This is one of the favorite exercises I do with my friends who are like, no, if there's something complaining there in there, like just close your eyes, draw a picture of what is your ideal woman like. What is she wearing? How's her hair? What is she doing? What's up? What's she drinking? Where is she drinking? What's she eating? Exactly. I started doing that myself, and that shifted everything.
I call that.
The app brain totally creates the reality.
Yes.
It's that one decision away.
Yes. Because our brain, and this is another little neuroscience tidbit, our brain doesn't know the difference between what we're imagining and what really is. There's all of these different pieces in it. I love this little piece of the brain that's called the reticular activating system. So that when you begin to think, I want this or I need this, the brain goes to work filtering all of those things so that you pay attention to them, brings opportunities to you, brings to your notice. It's not like the universe is bringing things to you, but all of a sudden, this different part of your brain begins to open up and pay attention.
Awareness and focus. It's like red car, yellow car, right?
Yes, exactly, exactly that. And so for that woman who still is sitting there saying, I just don't know what that looks like, then just think, what did you want to be when you were a little girl? What was something that you thought? And people will say, well, being a princess isn't for everyone, but what are the elements of being a princess that you loved? And bring that to your life. What was it? And even though, I mean, yeah, just think about it.
Next. Yeah, what does being princess mean? That's because being princess for me could be very different for you. Yeah, your being princess could be very different to what my being princess is. My being princess is probably, I don't know, is dressed in a certain way and being alive in a certain way. Your being princess is probably getting treated in a certain way and having certain people in your life would be mad.
Yeah.
Really crazy.
And that permission to dream about what is possible, to dream what is possible.
I love that. permission, because most of us are not giving ourselves permission. Because again, as I started this conversation, I think our generation is that stuck generation, I call. We were we were brought up very independently, but at the same time, we imbibed the olden traditional values because it's a learned behavior. That's what moms did. That's what grandmas did. So we have nobody said those words, shrink yourself. Nobody said those words, you have to not aspire yourself, right? What we did lose ourselves because that's what they did.
Right.
So, how do you give yourself?
Hmm. I think it's very straightforward to just say, I give myself permission to dream. I give myself permission to pursue a life that is bigger than what I'm living now. Success means all different kinds of things to people. It's not, for some people, it is the money, it's the houses, it's the cars, and all of that. For some people, success might simply mean that there's no more addiction in my family line. It is, and I say simply, but I just mean it's not, it doesn't have a dollar value on it. It has this holistic life value. And deciding what success is for you, being really honest with yourself, not being ashamed, if you want big houses, big cars, a boat, you want all of that, then go for it. Be it. Go for it. But if you want over here on something else that maybe you're a little bit afraid that if you said success is this, that people would think that's silly. Listen, the things that you're able to do right now, that's one of the most important things that I think is that you cannot devalue what you know and what you're able to do. And this came to me so powerfully when my sister-in-law, who was getting married, she was 18 and she didn't know how to cook. She didn't know how to cook for her husband, but I took it for granted because my mom taught me how to cook from the time I was 5 or 6 years old. Nobody in the marketplace would have thought being able to make a chocolate pie or to make a meatloaf had any value. But to that girl who didn't know how to make a meatloaf, it meant everything. So don't devalue what you do know how to do, what you love to do, and let that be a pathway for the success that you want in your life.
And be honest to yourself, what you just said. Don't have to be ashamed, right? You don't have to say, oh, I dream of being a monk when you actually don't. You want to be the most flashy person. If that's what you want, there's nothing wrong or right. Who tells anybody what's wrong or right? If that makes you happy, being a monk is not going to make you happy.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
So, that being honest, being authentic to yourself, taking that decision, making that action towards that decision, what if in all that you call selfish?
Mm.
Because more often than not, a woman who starts thinking about herself is quite often labeled selfish.
This is what I believed. I think it was the first program that I created. It's called Heart Code, and it is knowing who you are, who you love, all of those kind of beautiful things, and unlocking your heart code, the unique, beautiful one that you are. Because this is my firm belief: when you are free, you create space for others to be free too. And so that's not selfish to know who you are and what you bring, because when you can know that and walk in the confidence of that, and you're not judging yourself against anyone else, which we live in a world that is so prone to do that. We look at social media and my hair doesn't look like that. My body doesn't look like that. My face doesn't, all of those things. And we judge ourselves against others. And when we stop judging ourselves against others and start loving ourselves for who we've been made and who we've been created to be, obviously continuing to move forward and become the better version of ourselves. When we are whole, when we are free, we open up this beautiful, expansive place for others to be free and whole too.
So true. And it's so amazing to be about places. And But still, at that point as well, I think that a lot of conditioning still you have to fight, especially when you've lived a certain way, people pleasing or doing it more than and everything. Suddenly you start putting yourself first. It's not that you're selfish, it's because you deplete it,
Right. Right.
right?
Even in that moment, even in that moment when I was working in that job and it was so painful for me, I had to be authentic and true to myself. And I had to to realize that people's perceptions of us are not necessarily the truth. They're looking at us through the filters that they bring to the table, too. So, someone who maybe didn't have that great of a relationship with someone in their life, and you remind them they've got that filter over their selves about who you are. And you cannot control that no matter how hard you try. You can only continue to be the very best version of yourself that you know how to be.
Wow. What a wholesome conversation this is. Um, what would you like the listeners who finished listening to this episode? What would you hope that awakens in a woman today after this episode?
I love that. What would I love to awaken in them first? That they would begin to live from a place and a knowledge of that you are deeply and greatly loved. Deeply and greatly loved. Even if it doesn't feel like that the people around you deeply and greatly love you, that God Himself deeply and greatly loves you. And that out of that place, that it's so important that you begin to experience and love the things about you that are weird and quirky and maybe not the norm, because those are the things that people need in the earth today, not the formula, because none of us are living out of that formula. And I would want you to know that you are not too broken. You are not too far behind. Even if you're 85 years old watching this, you are not too late to be everything that you are meant to be. And the most important thing you can do is start today to be the true, authentic self that you are, because that's who this world desperately needs.
It- I think the world is tired of, as you said, the formula given, the inauthentic and fake selves. I think we're craving for deeper, genuine connections.
Yes.
Wow. Thank you so much, Donna. This has been an amazing, wholesome conversation. You remind me that reinvention isn't about starting over. It's actually about reclaiming the vision that you were never lost. That vision was always there. Now reclaim. So if this conversation resonated, explore Donna's work and Vision Reclaimed in the show notes. And remember, your story isn't finished. Thank you, Donna. That was wonderful. I hope you enjoyed this.
Oh, I did so much. I did so much. You are a brilliant, 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 and generous host. And you just did such a wonderful job of asking the kind of questions that go to the heart of what I was feeling and what I was thinking. And you gave me such a gracious space to communicate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It was an honor to have you on the platform today. And it just keeps reminding me we are made for so much, so much. That vision, that nudge I keep saying to everybody around me, that nudge you have, that pull you have, please listen to that voice. Really, because we all can turn our lives around.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Donna.
Thank you.